And here we go. So what is the square root of 27? This broke into root 4 and root 10. Were you able to figure out that this was root 9 and root 3? And therefore 3 root 3. Who had that? Raise your hand if you had that. Okay, good. On to this one. What's weird about it? Can't do square root of a negative. So it's not just that there's no answer. You go, it's the square root of 25 and the square root of negative 1. And I bet you know that this is 5, but do you know what that is? I said it the other day. Who's got a short-term memory? What do you think? 5i is the final answer. Catch that? All right, on to this one. Square root of 81. Would you agree that that is just a simple number? What is it? 9. Done. But this one, that's not simple. But I can break it into 2 square roots. Nominate a couple, that would be smart. 81 doesn't make a 75. Oh, I know what you're doing. You're thinking of what's it between. This isn't that. This is simplify the square root of 75 into like 6 root 2. Yes?
25 and 5.
25 and 3. There it is. And then what is 25 square root? 5 root 3. See how these are working? Does that make sense to you? This is exactly equal to that. It's not like an estimate. It's the same thing. That or this. And so you have to simplify these to get the full credit. On the test, we're already knowing that some kids are going to forget to simplify those. And we're saying, well, we'll give them half credit. But if they can simplify it all the way down like this, they get the full credit. Another really common mistake is people think that that doesn't exist. But it does.
0.
It's just 0. Because 0 times 0 is 0. All right. Let's move on. What's that? It's the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root. This part is called starts with a D. Do you remember it from yesterday? Discriminant. The discriminant part tells you how many roots you're going to have. What if this came out negative? Then you don't have any answers. What if it comes out to a positive? 2 answers, because you do plus it and minus it. What if this all comes out to 0 and it just cancels away? Then how many answers do you have? 1. And it's that, which is the vertex, in case you've forgotten it from last chapter. That's the vertex and the axis of symmetry formula. Okay. Let's move on. Notice they're just reminding you that the plus minus gives you 2 answers. You do it once with the plus and once with the minus. This thing is a pain in the butt. It's a lot of work, but it's good because it works when things won't factor. So let me show you again when you'd use it. You got x squared plus 6x minus 7. Well, that one you'd factor it. But what if it was minus 1? Think about that. Would that factor? No. So then you use it to find the x-intercepts. The same thing you'd get from the factors. But now we got to know A, B, and C. A is 1. B is 6. C is not 1. I get that all the time. What do you think C is? It's not 1. Yes? Negative 1. You got to include the sign in front of it. Okay? And then you just stick it in the formula. But here's my best way to write that formula. I was singing the song in my head as I was writing it. X equals negative b. And then I put an empty spot there, though. Because I'm going to put in the opposite of b. Maybe I should just put a negative right here to make sure I don't forget that it's the opposite of b. Plus or minus square root. And then I put empty spots. All these parentheses, they are so important. I know some of you are going to try to skip that because you're like, oh, I can just do that in my head. That's where you're going to make mistakes. So put the parentheses in there. Trust me, as you get to pre-calc, those parentheses become huge. Happens all the time. People would skip the parentheses and then get it wrong. Okay, so let's stick in the right things. What's this supposed to be? Negative b. So it's negative 6. See, there's a negative here. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. So it's again a 6 squared. 4a is 1. C is 1. I just made a mistake there. All it takes is one mistake. That negative 1 is key. All over to a, and a is 1. It's right here. And now it'll just come down to, can the kids simplify that down? Most kids will know the formula. Most kids will be able to stick the numbers in, but will they be able to simplify it without screwing up? You know why it's hard? There's 16 parts. There's 16 parts where you can screw up. Do you get that it's hard to get kids to do 16 things in a row without making one dumb mistake? That's what you're going to have to do. That's why this test is one of the hardest tests, just because of dumb mistakes. A lot of people are going to get a C because they're going to screw up one of the 16 steps. I'm going to show you why there's 16. I'm going to write it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got to do a square root, you know. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and I think I counted one of my parentheses twice or something. So there's 16 things that have to happen. And then you start doing steps. All right, so is it impossible? No, but do you get being aware that you have to do 16 things right in a row helps you realize, I gotta be careful. You know what I mean? If somebody tells you, hey, I'll give you $1,000, but you gotta do 16 things perfectly in a row, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm gonna be really careful that I don't make one dumb mistake, because that'll cost me the whole thing. Because that's what this is like. Okay, -6 plus and minus the square root of 36 plus 4. Now, some people are going to be like, but sir, it says minus in the formula. Why is there a plus there? Because there were two negatives. One here, one there. Two negatives make it +4. I know somebody messed up on that because you're human, and somebody's going to make that mistake. -6 plus and minus the square root of 40 all over 2. Am I done yet? Well, you could have half credit at that point. How about to get the full credit? Can you simplify this? Everybody try to get that simplified. Square root of 40. We just practiced that a second ago. Truckee, what do you think the square root of 40 breaks into? Just give me two roots.
4 and 10.
And then what does that actually simplify to?
2 and 10.
2 root 10. Nice. Now, this is the part where some kids, again, I get it, it's complicated, but some kids can't take this part. They don't know what to do right here. My favorite saying is, if you can factor it, you should. So what is in both of them that could factor out? Because then it'll cancel with that.
2.
The 2. So you factor the 2 out of the top. 2 comes out, and I have -3 plus and minus square root 10. Process what just happened there, because it's pretty much done. The 2's just have to cancel. Can you see how I got this part? That's the key. How did I get this green thing to turn into the other green thing? Yes?
You multiplied out the 2, and so that would be, if you multiplied it out, that would make the answer.
Yep. And these 2's cancel, so then my answer is this. And if you're like, but you never broke it into 2 parts, Mr. Server, I don't have to. I can leave my answer like this, but it is 2 answers. It's whatever -3 plus the square root of 10 is, and -3 minus the square root of 10. It is 2 answers. This answer and that answer, because this breaks into 2 parts. But I noticed I didn't do that till the very end. All right, so that's what it's going to come down to, is can you handle that? So here's another one. It's got an A and a B and a C. Everybody stick that in to the formula and give it a shot. All right. X equals -B. So what should I put there? 5. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. What is b squared? 25. Minus 4 times a times c. And I honestly think that this part right here makes more mistakes than any other part. The other parts are pretty easy. Opposite of this, that catches a few kids. Everybody squares right. That's no big deal. Everybody can times by 2 on the bottom. But that blue part, that's where kids are going to mess up. So be really careful in the tricky part. Okay? So A is 1 and C is 9. Now what? And is it plus 36 or minus 36? Minus 36. 5 plus or minus the square root of, I have no idea what 25 minus 36 is. Somebody help me out.
Minus 11.
Negative 11. Very good. And it's all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. So this is all over 2. And this was negative 11. Good news for today, you get to just say, there's no such thing. Square roots and negatives don't exist. But let me tell you what you would have done in pre-calc. And maybe what we'll have you do by the end. 5 plus and minus I root 11 all over 2. There's just a subtle difference. This negative means you got to have an I for imaginary out in front. And then that's it. Any questions? I get this. If you didn't get square root of negative 11, you're normal. Because this is where people mess up, this part. So watch really close for that b squared minus 4ac part. All right. Now let's go to another one. This one here. The a is a little bigger this time. And, ooh, wait a minute. Truckee, what's different about this one than all the other ones?
It's not equal to 0.
Yes. So what do I do to start with? I got to make it equal 0. So what do I do?
Add 4 on both sides.
Correct.
5x squared plus 9x plus 4.
He's on top of it. Now, use the formula. Stick the numbers in. Solve. I'll pause for a second. Let me try that. Okay. Negative b. Negative 9. Plus and minus the square root of b squared. What's b squared? Ryan, what's b squared? Minus 4 times a times c. A was 5. C was 4. All over 2a, which is 2 times 5. So it's 10. This time it isn't 2. Because remember, it's 2a on the bottom, and that means 2 times the 5. Okay. If you can get this far, you're so close, but you just have to not screw up this part that I said was the most common place to make mistakes. Did you say negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 20 times 4 is 80, so it's 1. Did you have 1 there? Nice. All over 10. Now, another really common mistake is to forget that the square root of 1 actually is a thing. What's the square root of 1? It's just 1. So now it's negative 9 plus or minus 1 over 10. And there'll be a few kids that'll leave it that way, and I'll be like, oh, you were so close. Why isn't that done? Because you just have to do it once with plus and once with minus. Negative 9 plus 1 over 10 simplifies, and then negative 9 minus 1 over 10, and that simplifies. And so this one, negative 8/10, which is negative 4/5, and this one, negative 10 over 10, which is negative 1. 2 answers, that and that. All right. Any questions? Now, I'm going to give you one more. 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Use the quadratic formula to find the two answers. This one does work out nice. You get two nice, clean answers, like 4 and -2, okay? Use the quadratic formula, and this should come out to two nice answers. If you screw up, you're going to get weird fractions. Pause for a second. You give that one a try. Go ahead and plug in the numbers and tell me what to do. X equals negative
3,
plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4ac, which is
2 and 1,
all over.
3 times 2.
Nice. If you got that far, you're going to be better than most. Now, let's see if you can be the best. This is where most of the mistakes are made. Hazel, what did you get underneath that root?
1.
And so this is -3 plus or minus the square root of 1 all over 4. And some kids write that as their answer, and I cry a little bit and give them part credit. What should you do? Kai, take it over from there.
The square root of 1 would be 1.
So then it's really -3 plus and minus 1 over 4. And then?
Do two equations for the plus and the minus.
And then there's -3 minus 1 over 4. And I get two answers. What was the top one?
Negative 1 over 2.
Yeah, this reduces to 1/2. Nice. And this one?
Negative 1.
-4 over 4, which is -1, -1/2, -1. Who beat the odds and got both answers? All right. Okay. That's all it takes to get a good grade on this test, but it's 16 parts. All right, now we're going to do a little bit of factoring practice and then take a factoring quiz in class. I warned you about it yesterday. It's just 5 questions? 5 questions. Okay, it's the basics of factoring. This is like baby factoring. This is no big deal. Okay, so here's the first style I want to practice with you. A lot of people forget what to do when there's only two things. Factor that. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to compare this with the person sitting next to you. Everybody give this a shot. So we're just doing a little practice for that factoring quiz we're going to take. 2x and x. Then I always say to look at the signs. Since there's only positives, it should be plus and plus. Then the last part is the only hard part. This and this. And I know some people have this dumb rule that it's supposed to multiply to this and add to that, and that's wrong. It just multiplies to this. Sorry, not that. This, it just multiplies to 1. So there's only one way. It's got to be a 1 and a 1. It doesn't add up to 3. Notice, it doesn't add up to 3. It can't. But when you do the outside and the inside, then it adds up to 3. Does that make sense to you? Then what's the answer for this part? X equals -1/2. You're not going to have to do that on this quiz. This is just a factoring quiz. But just a reminder, the two answers are this and this, which is the same thing we've got the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is just better because it works even if things don't factor. This factoring is a little faster. You don't have to do 16 things to get this right. The quadratic formula is better, but it's more complicated. Yes?
The multiplies into one and then adds into the other only works if A equals 4.
You are correct. It's not a dumb rule. It's just a dumb rule as soon as this changes. As soon as that's not a 1 anymore, then your old rule screws you up. So I think it's best to just memorize that it multiplies to this. And then you'll always have to check it by multiplying it all out. Okay. Last kind of factoring. This will just take 2 seconds. That's x and x and what? Yes.
+5 negative.
Yup. Do you remember that kind? All right. So take the 5-question factoring quiz to make sure you don't lose factoring. It's on your final. That's why I'm practicing it right now, because we took 2 weeks off of school. Not really 2 weeks, but it was really close to 2 weeks. And do the factoring quiz. You can retake it, so this is not a high stakes thing. I'll pause for a second. Actually, that's all I have for the video for today. You have a homework worksheet, which has got 4 problems on it. And in fact, I'll give you a free one. On today's homework, you can just skip any of the problems that you want. You just have to only skip one. Okay? So out of the 4 questions, skip whichever one you don't like. And that's all I got for you for today.